Hello everyone and welcome to today's Kerbal Space Program video in which we're going to be taking this thing to my ocean base in Laythe, which I built a while ago actually, but here's a shot of it here, all waiting for us. So as you can see, it's a nice floating rig, but I think the problem with it is that we've done all the science in that location and now we need to get science from other places on Laythe as well. So we're going to be sending this thing there. So we just fire up the engines and launch it. It's a big bird seaplane. It's a plane. I've given it away now. It's a plane that can land in the sea, and Seaplane. And we're gonna the objective of this mission is we're gonna fly it to Laythe, to the base, land it by the base, grab some more crew. At the moment we're flying with Sandrian Kerman there, who's a scientist, but she can't go on her own. She needs some company. So we'll swing by the Laythe base, grab some crew from there, and then we'll fly to one of the islands on Laythe, grab some science from there. We've got a lab on board here, and we've got mining equipment as well, so we can refuel it, so we can, in theory, charter the whole of Laythe and get science from every biome and every island, including different areas that are in water, because we have the ability to land on the sea. So this is the best. This is a purebred Laythe Explorer plane. So obviously the download for it is in the description. If you want to use this for Kerbin, you can also use it for Kerbin. It is able to take off on the water from Kerbin just as well as it can on Laythe. And obviously on Laythe, jetpacks don't work, so it is designed to be accessible, as in Kerbals can embark and disembark without needing to use a jetpack to get back on board. And this applies for both land and sea landings. Anyway, here we are, flying it into orbit. We're nearly there. We're just going to throttle the vector engines right down. The reason I went with vectors as the engines is just because this thing is horrendously balanced in terms of aerodynamics. That's why we need those giant... Oh, we can get rid of that aerodynamic nose cone now. And there's Sandrian sitting there in the cockpit. Yeah, as I was saying, it's not very well aerodynamically balanced. It's got those big fins right at the top, so it has a really, really, really bad tendency to flip out of control. That's why we have those enormous aeroplane wings at the back, just to try and keep it stable as it flies. But it was also helpful to have the vector engines because they have enormous gimbal, so we can hold this thing under control really easily. And the Rhino stage can do most of the burn. The Rhino is the big engine that we have now. This can do most of the burn to get us to Joule, and we'll just do the final bit of Laythe expenditure using the very efficient but very low thrust nuclear stage. The nuclear stage is going to be there basically to just do the final sort of 400 meters per second to get the rest of the way to Joule, and then just to do all the Laythe encounter tweaking, and then to get us circularized at Laythe as well. So at the moment we have 6,199 meters per second of Delta V in total. So, we have more than enough to get to Joule because, you don't need to worry about being too efficient for this sort of thing. Especially when you're using rockets with multiple stages, you can just keep adding fuel tanks and just over-engineer it, to be honest. I take no shame. In fact, I over-engineer a lot of my spacecraft because there's no need to... I mean, if you're trying to build an SSTO, that's fair enough. You want to try and make it as efficient as possible. When we're just doing this, I'm doing it for fun, and sometimes it's not really that, at least for me. I know some people find it really fun to calculate everything to be the bare minimum, but for me, I find it more fun to just, not have to worry about fuel and things, and just enjoy the ride as we go. And obviously, because people might be downloading this from the description, it will be easy to fly even for beginners. Although I wouldn't recommend this if you are a beginner. I would suggest doing slightly more less ambitious missions. This because although this isn't what I would consider hard, I think my perspective of what is and what isn't hard in this game is different to most people. So I don't know. Maybe the viewers, you the viewers, can make an educated decision as to whether or not you feel you'd be able to do this. But if you've never done Planetary before, I certainly wouldn't recommend this as your first. I would probably recommend sending like a little rover to Eve or Juna. They're the two best places, and they both have atmospheres. Eve has got a very, very thick atmosphere, so it's very easy to land things on it. Unfortunately, it makes taking off from Eve very, very difficult. I don't really like going to Eve very much, which is why I did an entire series about going to Eve, obviously, because I hate myself. Anyway, here we've got a nice shot of the actual plane in space. We can deploy the solar panels, we've got a communications relay there, and we've got a big antenna there. And if we open the cargo bays, we can have a look inside. We can see we've got some Science Juniors in there. We have a drill with a little ore tank. We don't need a big ore tank. We just need that one to be there to act as kind of the middleman between the drill and the processor. The processor's tucked away in that fairing. It will still work in the fairing, and it just looks a little bit nicer when it's inside that payload fairing. I don't know if it actually makes much of a meaningful difference in terms of the aerodynamics, but I think it just looked nicer that way. The only downside really with the fairing is the fact that I don't know if it's really a problem in the stock game, to be honest, but especially when using like cloud mods or mods with enhanced lighting, that will affect all the parts fine. So when you're flying under a cloud, the whole craft gets covered in shadow and things, except for fairings. Fairings are just unaffected by changes in light for some reason. It's really odd. So that's a downside to it, I suppose, but it doesn't bother me too much, to be honest. Now, if I were doing an SS2 mission, or a mission where I was really, really bothered about doing things efficiently, I would use a Tylo gravity assist to get us captured into a dual orbit. Just so we don't have to do any engine burning to get ourselves captured, and then we can just swing around. We can either do a few more complex gravity assists bouncing between sort of Tylo, Val, and Laythe to get ourselves a really efficient capture. In fact, you can pretty much almost get yourself completely captured without needing to expend much fuel at all. But these things it takes a lot more effort. Actually, that's the end of the story. It takes a lot more effort, and since we have the ability to just add more fuel at this point, because we're not doing an SSO and efficiency is not really that important. So we'll just do a big circularization burn at Laythe, and just because we don't need to do an aero capture because we can just add more fuel, I think it'll be better if we just did all of our circularization using engine burning, because I feel like that's a little bit more realistic. Is that the word? Like, I feel like we don't want to be subjecting the seaplane to too much heat because it has a lot of delicate instrument equipment on board, so we don't want to be exposing that to too much heat, especially before it's even been used. So there we are. See, Scatterer just kind of glitches out on Jewel as you approach it. It's the shadows being cast by the planets. But there we got a nice big shot of the green monster before swooping down to Laythe. So it's going to be quite an expensive burn to get ourselves captured. You can generally make an estimate by how straight your orbit line going past the planet will be. If you've got a very horseshoe-shaped line, it's going to take a very minimal amount of fuel to capture. If it's more or less straight, it's going to be incredibly expensive. So yeah, like I say, we're not going too fast. We could have easily captured using the air resistance alone, but probably would have required some excessive rolling, like you may have seen on my bigger SS2 videos, and just the fact that we'd be exposing it to a lot of heat. And like I say, we've got the ability to just add some more fuel so we can circularize using engines, so we may as well do that. And well, that's all I had to say really about that topic. So you can see here we're getting like little glitches there, popping up and down, popping in and out. That's just because our trajectory is putting us on paths that give us gravity assists from other moons and or Laythe again. So you can see that purple line got us of that very, very classic horseshoe shape that we would want if we wanted to do a nice, low power burn to get ourselves captured. But we could have done that, so we could have stopped burning there and just rode it out and then countered Laythe again with a more efficient method of circularization. But again, we've got like 2,700 meters per second remaining in our nuclear state, so we can afford to be a bit sloppy and just spend a bit more to get ourselves circularized. So now we're captured, we can just use the last, well, not the last remaining, we can just use a portion of the remaining fuel to get ourselves circularized before we can think about getting our orbital path to go over the floating base and getting our periapsis to fall within Laythe's atmosphere. In fact, Laythe's atmosphere, although it's fairly thick, it's not as thick as Kerbin's, so we don't have to be too careful about making sure our trajectory is not too our entry angle isn't too steep. So yeah, you can be fairly liberal. It's not quite as easy as Juna, in which re-entry heating may as well not even exist for that planet, but it's certainly not as bad as Kerbin, and definitely not as bad as Eve. Eve is the one you have to be really, really careful about, because it can kind of be a bit, I don't say misleading, but you can feel like you're actually going to be safe entering Eve, and then when you get to like the 40 kilometer mark, 40 kilometers above sea level, the air just like hits you like a ton of bricks. So you have to be careful there. We're just keeping an eye on that nuclear stage. I think we managed to get far enough away from it where we're not going to collide into it, and you can see, tumbles away nice and safely. We didn't get to see any explosions this time, no fireworks this time, but yeah, I mean, we're just going head on with that cupola module, and we're not even getting a temperature gauge show up. And for full disclosure, this was played with 100% re-entry heating activated, all the difficulty settings. I don't think I was playing with, in fact I definitely wasn't playing with ComNet. Although if you do play with ComNet, this would work because A, you have a Kerbal there in the command seat, so it's irrelevant anyway. But if you were just flying this using the onboard probe core, we have communications things on board, so it can stay in contact with the communication satellite to maintain a good connection to the KSC, so it's not a problem. Anyway, we can see I don't know why I still have the default spacecraft logo for it. I probably should have changed that to the base icon for the map view. But regardless, we can just plunge our way through the clouds, and at this point, if you just keep an eye on the altitude meter on the top of the screen in the middle, you can see we're rapidly falling towards the surface, but I was just looking at just eyeballing the screen, and I was looking like, oh, I'm miles away from sea level. So I just started plunging and plunging and plunging. And then I happened to glance up, and I realised that I was actually a lot closer to the surface than I thought I was, and this is because Scatterer had just failed to draw the ocean. So you see, I'm at 600 metres above sea level. I suddenly realised and quickly changed the engines to afterburner to get as much power to lift ourselves off. Just open Scatterer options, and there we go. So sometimes Scatterer glitches out like that. That's why my oceans look pretty cool, and that's kind of the main visual effect we've got here is Scatterer. So sometimes it glitches out, so you have to just quickly open the menu using Alt F11 and just rebuild the ocean, and that just fixes the problem. Anyway, we can cruise along, we can just turn off one of the engines actually, just to save a bit of fuel, although because we have an IRSU, or is it ISRU? I can never remember now which way around it is. We have mining equipment on board, so fuel expenditure is not really an issue, but you know, for those of you that are interested, we have this thing has about 23,000 meters per second of fuel when fully loaded, with the engines in their normal mode. In afterburner mode, it has about 9,000 and something meters per second of fuel. So even on afterburner mode, which is the most inefficient mode for these engines, we still have a huge amount of range on this. And like I said, there's enough islands on Laythe that we could easily circumnavigate the entire planet entire moon, I should say, using just the afterburner mode. So you don't have to be too worried about it. But I thought, just for the sake of realism, we can do it. Now, there's a weird glitch on my game where I don't have the yellow square show up around targets, so I have to kind of do all of this using eyeballing it. So I was just scanning the ocean for the base, and there it is. We can do a quick turnaround and turn on the air brakes. I'm going to slow this down to normal speed actually, just so you can watch the really graceful landing. I think that's about as safe as you could ask for in terms of landing. So you can just probably quickly hit F3 to make sure nothing was destroyed on landing. F3 just tells you what happened in the flight. So there we go. Nothing was destroyed, so we're all good. Kerbal is still alive, so we can just taxi it over to be closer to the base. No reason, just so obviously the Kerbal's going to have to swim towards it. We may as well minimise the amount they have to swim, because if you watched the Laythe base video in which I put this base here, we actually sent a submarine down to the bottom of the ocean to get some samples, and it's very, very deep. So we want to minimise any chance of the Kerbals drowning as they move from the base to the plane. Anyway, not much more to say about that. We've got a nice little view of it in the ocean. So the engines are nice and clear above the water. It does sit fairly low down, but I mean, it can take off even when it's full of fuel, so no worries there. One thing I would do though, I don't actually know if it would work with all the oxidizer in the tanks as well. At the moment, I only have the tanks filled with liquid fuel, so it might not be able to take off with full oxidizer as well. But why would you fill it with oxidizer? Because none of the engines can utilize oxidizer. So when you're using the mining unit, do make sure you just click the liquid fuel only. Don't click liquid fuel plus oxidizer. And I would probably have drained the monopropellant as well from the cupola module, because again, you don't need monopropellant because there's no RCS. Anyway, we can, at this point I quick save just because I wanted to get rid of the little Sepratron thing. There was some debris clipped onto the end. Just quick save, quick load to get rid of that. Anyway, the way we take off is we get to about 30 meters per second before we hit action group 2 to fire up the afterburner mode. Just we can accelerate up to about 50 meters per second before just tipping up. And you can see we can easily clear the water, and as soon as you're out, I would just hit 2 again, just to switch the engines back to the more efficient non-afterburner mode. Dry mode, is it? I've probably got it wrong around now. Got a nice view from the lab. The only downside really is that the lab is a vertical building, and I never really understood Squad's logic for that. You'd think they'd have made it horizontal. I don't really understand why it's a vertical stack. Anyway, so that's the only unfortunate thing, but you can just use your imagination, just pretend it's just pretend it's the right way up. So obviously I'm playing this video in fast motion right now just to save you the boredom of watching me fly to an island. I may as well prove that this thing can do landings as well, especially on the rough terrain of Laythe. So what we're going to do is we're just going to fly to this island, plant a flag there so we can target the island in future missions. And just so we can take some samples from the ground here as well. I don't know if I've ever been here before actually on an SS2 mission. Maybe I have. I don't know. But now that we're planting a flag here, we'll know if we ever come here again in future videos. So we can deploy the brakes. I've got those rear landing legs there just to protect the water skates, but it was fine. We didn't actually need them. And we've got a pretty nice landing there. Pretty soft, not too bumpy. And obviously the brakes slow this thing down fairly quickly. So the big landing gear at the back just to make sure that our skates, what is the term for them? Feet, boats, kayaks, I don't know. They're really, really high off the ground, so you don't have to worry too much about bashing terrain. Even when we come to taking off, to like traxing over bumpy ground, it's not a problem. Anyway, we can think about refilling. I mean, we have loads of fuel left, so we don't need to, but just to prove that it works, in case there's any doubt, we can just activate this convertertron, make sure it's synthesizing liquid fuel only, and deploy the drill and get it mining. And whilst that's doing its thing, we can actually get a Kerbal out on EVA and plant a flag. So you can see we've got that ladder on the bottom. So obviously the way we embarked the vessel was just by jumping onto the wings whilst it was floating. Unfortunately, we can't do that now that it's not in the water because it's too high off the ground. So we have that ladder there as well, just for landings, land disembarking, land embarking technically. Anyway, not much more to say about this really, so I guess we can just time warp through a lot of this just to let the liquid fuel fill up, and there we go. So we can retract the drill now. Make sure you stop the mining unit because it will carry on consuming electricity even if you've got no ore. Luckily, you may have noticed in parts of this video the electric charge might have been recharging even without the solar panels extended. Although we do have those little solar panels at the front, we also have two thermoelectric generators on this thing, so it will passively, I was about to say passively aggressively, it will just passively generate power, but obviously not a huge amount. So we do have the solar panels there just to help them out a bit, although since we are on Laythe, we are a long way from the sun, so solar panel efficiency is not that great. So as you can see, we picked a pretty good landing spot because we could use that slope to do a sort of ski jump off the thing, but this thing can take off on flat surfaces without the need for afterburners, and we do a nice low pass of the ground just to really freak out our passengers before doing a quick turnaround and heading back for the base. So as you can see, we've got it set as a target, so we can just follow the pink marker on the nav ball. And other than that, the sun is setting, we can enjoy the view, have a nice gentle flight. As you can see, we're just tipping it up and down. There we go, we just activate a bit of time warp now and just watch the map. But again, this is going to be played at fast speed just so you don't have to sit through the whole thing in real time. There's the sun, just giving a little example of how far away from it we are. So solar panels, while they still do work, they're not the most efficient things in the world, which is why I thought I'll just add the electric generators there just so we have another way of generating fuel, at least while the engines aren't running. So, not much more to say about that really. For those of you might remember, I have sent a seaplane to Laythe before, and that was where I sent the seaplane down. It didn't have any mining equipment on it, just landed in the sea, did loads of science, deployed a mini sub, and you can see the rover icon on the map. That was a legacy of that video. We deployed a mini sub, did some exploring, got some science, and then the seaplane actually took off again, got back into orbit, docked with a orbital tug, which then flew the seaplane back to Kerbin and landed on the runway there. So I really liked that video actually, and I've always wanted to do another seaplane to the Laythe video, but I wanted to make it a little bit more different. So I thought this time it would just be one that will stay on Laythe to accompany the floating base, and it can go and do scout missions to get science from more far away locations on the moon without needing, I thought about sending a boat or even another Akranaplan. I would like another textbook landing in the war, by the way. Yeah, I thought about making a speedboat or something, but I thought, planes are just a lot cooler, aren't they? I think we can all agree. So yeah, we can just do a nice, or I'll speed it up. We're taxiing towards the base again, and once we're nearly there, we can just deploy the brakes and park ourselves up. So yes, in the description and at the end of the video, there will be links to the seaplane video and the ocean base videos if you're interested in watching more Laythe missions. And that was the end of that thought process. And of course, the craft file is available for download as well. So not much else. We didn't actually do any science on that island, but I've got my tech tree maxed out. I don't actually need it really, to be honest. This is just more about the joy of flying aircraft. I'm so lame, I'm so lame. Okay, so now that we're back, the Kerbals don't really want to stay on this cramped little plane. Kind of feeling a bit nauseous after that landing, so we can get them back into the base. So I'll just show. I won't show you all of them going back, but I'll show the first one going in. They can just climb up this ladder here. They can climb up this ladder here. They can climb up this ladder. Yep, there we go. And climb up this ladder again and get into this pod. And from that pod, we can just transfer them into things. So we can compare the data to the data we've got on the base and see how that all works out using this workstation I've got set up here. And well, other than that, there's a nice little shot of the plane next to the base to give you a sense of what the plane looks like next to the base, I guess. I don't know, I don't really think that one. I don't really think that part reasoning through. But yeah, nice little shot just showing what it looks like. And there's the EastEnders shot. Is that what it's called? I'm pretty sure that's the official name for this kind of shot, you know, where it zooms out. Just showing the kind of scale of the plane compared to the base. Although the base is quite big in terms of its structure, the plane is actually bigger in terms of footprint in the water. Just an interesting observation there, really. And that's obviously the scale of both of them in the vastness of Laythe's ocean. But there we go. For those wondering, Laythe is the only place in the solar system aside from Kerbin where jet engines work, so this thing won't work on Eve. Now what you're seeing here was actually the first iteration of this video. I filmed the entire video, had the footage ready to edit, and I just decided that it looked so ugly. Look at it. Oh, it's so ugly. So I scrapped it all and rebuilt the plane and did it again. So that's why there was a bit of a delay for this video, because I thought, you know what, I'm not happy with this. It looks ugly. It only has the capacity for 2 Kerbals, and it couldn't take off with full fuel tanks, so it was a bit inconvenient when it came to actually processing more fuel. So I thought, no, we'll rebuild it from the ground up. And so I did. And that was the video that you just watched. So I hope you enjoyed. Links to Twitter, Patreon, Discord, all in the description. On screen now are more Laythe missions. So top left is the construction of that floating base. Top right is the other seaplane video I've made. And bottom right is a maximum efficiency one. It's an SSTO from Kerbin to a Laythe island and back to Kerbin. So thank you very much for watching, and I hope you enjoyed.